Which God is the true one? This is a question of faith, something that cannot be proven or measured. But what if we asked a different question, one that can be answered with logic and data? Which God is the strongest? If we view religion not as a mystery, but as a massive project that organizes societies and influences human behavior, then we can analyze its strength. We live in a time where everything is measured, and the power of beliefs can also be quantified. For this mission, we have activated an analytical intelligence. Her name is Pneuma, and her purpose is singular. She will perform a comparative analysis of every belief system that has ever existed, from those that dominate the present to those that turned to dust in the past. There is no room here for dogmas or prejudices. A God is seen as an equation of power, a sum of their influence over people, their economic strength, and their capacity to survive over time. The investigation begins with a deep dive into a world where faith is transformed into statistics. At this moment, information from 4,200 religions, churches, and cults that have ever existed on Earth is being processed, from giant faith corporations with a global presence to small forgotten altars in remote villages. 4,200 different projects for humanity. All claim to be the right path. But in this simulation, only the most efficient will prevail. To understand how this strength is measured, we need to know the criteria. The system has defined 4 essential vectors that determine the vitality of any belief system. The first is the follower base, the number of people living under the rules of a particular faith. However, official numbers don't always tell the whole story. A person baptized in childhood who never attended a temple again might be considered an active follower. Therefore, an engagement coefficient is applied. The total count, which in Christianity reaches 2.4 billion, can be misleading. What truly matters is the active core, those who practice the rituals, who live the faith daily, and pass it on to the next generations. Social networks, donations, and attendance at places of worship are analyzed to separate nominal members from the true agents of faith. The second vector is time resistance, the capacity of a belief system to endure through the centuries. The age of a cult says a lot about the solidity of its foundations. If a religion has survived for 3,000 years, overcoming the fall of empires, wars, and revolutions, it means its model is extraordinarily adaptable. We see how certain gods disappeared shortly after emerging, while others spread and conquered new territories. Why did the cult of Mithras, so popular among Roman soldiers, go extinct? While Christianity, which started as a small movement, became a global force. The answer lies in the structure of each one. The third vector is the depth of influence, how deep a religion can go into a follower's mind, to the point of overriding the most basic instinct of all, self-preservation. For this, the so-called sacrifice index is calculated, a metric that measures a person's willingness to die for what they believe in. A God for whom someone is willing to give their life holds supreme power. Data from religious conflicts, acts of martyrdom, and holy wars from the last 2 millennia are processed. This is hard information, but necessary to evaluate the mobilization potential of each faith. A strong God is one whose command is worth more than life itself. Finally, the fourth vector, territorial expansion and geopolitical weight. What area of the planet does a faith control? This goes far beyond political borders. We are creating a map of mental influence. In which places do the laws of a sacred book carry more weight than civil laws? Where can religious leaders overturn government decisions? The assets of the churches, the lands they own, their influence on education, all of this is the physical manifestation of a God's power. After the first filtering, only those that had a significant historical impact remain in the analysis. Small local cults and short-lived sects were discarded. The list now contains 20 main players, the heavyweights that shaped civilizations. And even among them, some may have their days numbered without anyone noticing. To understand who has the best chance of winning, it is fundamental to know why the others lost. The analysis, therefore, begins in the cemetery of civilizations, examining the gods who no longer receive prayers. We find a pattern in the fall of all of them, a fatal flaw in their original design. And the preliminary data is unsettling, as it suggests that this same flaw may be active right now in the heart of one of the world's largest religions. The analysis leads us to a place of absolute silence. There are no prayers here, no smell of incense, and the fire of sacrifices went out long ago. This is the place where those who once held up the sky on their shoulders rest, those who commanded lightning, controlled the flooding of the Nile, and decided the fate of great battles. We are in the virtual necropolis of history, the cemetery of dead gods, Zeus, Jupiter, Osiris, Odin, names that once inspired fear in millions of people. Today they are just museum pieces and names of planets. For us, they are much more than history. They are data, gigabytes of information about systemic failures. What we are doing now is a sort of autopsy. Why did they die? Why did civilizations that possessed immense power, the best armies, and the most advanced science of their time suddenly abandon their divine patrons? We look for the vulnerability in the architecture of polytheism, the flaw that turned great pantheons into dust. The first object of analysis is the religious system of ancient Egypt. 3,000 years of stability. Imagine a corporation that dominates its market for 3 millennia. It is a phenomenal feat. The Egyptian gods were not just statues. They were integrated into the physics of the world. The sun rose because Ra sailed in his bark. The Nile overflowed because Isis wept for Osiris. It was a total and comprehensive project. However, there is a critical vulnerability in this model. It was rigidly linked to the state structure. The pharaoh was not just a king. He was a living god, the direct communication channel with the heavens. This functions as a bottleneck in the architecture, a single point of failure. When Egypt's political power weakened under the blows of Persians, Greeks, and Romans, the pharaoh's divine status was compromised. If a living god can be defeated by a mortal conqueror with an iron sword, then the system does not work. The faith collapsed because it was too material. The Egyptian gods did not survive the collapse of their state because they did not exist as an abstract idea. They lived only in the stone of the pyramids and in the body of the king. Moving on to Greece and Rome. Here the scenario is different. The Olympic pantheon with Zeus, Hera, and Apollo was a brilliant and vibrant religion that gave the world art, philosophy, and theatre. But there was a fatal flaw in its design, a problem of excess humanity. The Greek gods were too much like people. They envied, betrayed, lied, and became enraged. Zeus, the supreme leader, acted less like a universal moral compass and more like a capricious tyrant with unlimited power. When the believer sees that their God is morally imperfect, sacred fear diminishes. An erosion of authority occurs. If the gods can lie, why should I tell the truth? Polytheism created a complex and bureaucratic power structure. Olympus was like a board of directors, where everyone pulled in their own direction. Ares wanted war, Athena wanted peace. Poseidon sank ships that Hermes tried to save. For the average person, this created a conflict, whom to pray to, whose will was more important. The Roman Empire tried to solve the problem by absorbing the gods of conquered peoples, but this only generated more noise. By the 2nd century, there were so many cults in Rome that religion became a marketplace. When there are too many gods, none of them really matter. But the deepest flaw lay in the nature of the contract between man and God. In paganism, the relationship was an exchange. I give to you so that you may give to me. I sacrifice a bull, you send rain. I build a temple, you grant me victory. It was a business deal, but this type of contract is unstable, because if the rain doesn't come, the deal is broken. If the war is lost, the god hasn't fulfilled their part. The believer had the right to tear up the contract and look for another god. This made these cults vulnerable to crises. And it was at this moment of fragility that a completely new architecture emerged on the scene. Monotheism, faith in a single god. The difference is colossal. Paganism offered a deal. The new faiths demanded total surrender. Love your God with all your heart. Don't give him a bull. Give yourself entirely. In this new system, the logic is inverted. God is absolute and owes nothing to man. If it rains, it's a blessing. If there's a drought, it's a test of faith. This model of unconditional submission proved to be infinitely more resilient. When the believer accepts everything that happens as the will of a single entity, their faith becomes immune to circumstances. Crises do not destroy it, they only strengthen it. This was the innovation that changed the world. Even the fierce gods of the Vikings could not resist. Their world was heroic but pessimistic. In the end, all the gods lost. The new faith arrived with a better proposal: eternal life. And the pragmatic Vikings simply chose the more advantageous plan. Polytheism lost due to its lack of centralization, its moral relativism, and its fragile exchange model. The efficiency of a single leader proved superior to that of a council. Humanity made its choice. It seemed the era of order had arrived. One God, one truth. But history has its ironies. As soon as the competitors were eliminated, the winner split from within. The single project divided into incompatible versions, starting the longest and bloodiest family conflict in history. If we previously examined dead systems whose structures turned to dust, we now step into the territory of living giants. The analysis of the Abrahamic sector is complete. 3 world religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Together, they shape the consciousness of more than half the global population, nearly 4 billion people. It is an absolute monopoly in the market of meaning, but the most curious thing is the fundamental identity they share. All 3 are based on the same matrix. They stem from the same creation story. The world was made in 6 days by a single God. They share a sacred geography, a small piece of land in the Middle East, and revere common heroes: Abraham, Moses, the prophets. The history of the Abrahamic religions is the story of 2 great ruptures that changed the destiny of humanity. The first version to emerge from this matrix is Judaism. Its formation consolidated in the 2nd millennium BCE, making it the oldest monotheistic project still in operation. Its architecture has a unique characteristic. It was not created to be a mass-market product. It is a closed system, an exclusive club. The idea of a chosen people functions as an almost insurmountable barrier to entry. You cannot simply decide to be part of the system. Generally, you need to be born with the access key in your genetics. With only 14 million followers, in terms of expansion, it seems to have fallen behind. However, if we look at the survival metric, the results are phenomenal. The retention rate of its members is nearly 100%. Judaism survived conditions that would have annihilated any other civilization: diasporas, persecutions, and the absence of a state for nearly 2,000 years. What is the secret of this resistance? The answer lies in a structure that regulates every step of life. There are 613 rules that dictate what to eat, how to dress, when to work. Religion penetrates daily life at a molecular level, creating an ultra-dense social fabric. Isolation acts as a defense system, protecting it from assimilation. It is not a religion of expansion, but of preservation, a vault that traverses the storms of history, keeping its essence intact. About 2,000 years ago, the first great rupture occurred, giving rise to the second version, Christianity. The figure of Jesus of Nazareth is identified as the initiator of a fundamental rewrite, and the Apostle Paul as the architect of its global dissemination. The revolution was simple, but genius. Christianity removed the ethnic barrier. There is neither Jew nor Greek. It was a masterstroke in terms of reach and promotion. The developers of the new version simplified the most complex and restrictive rules, making the interface more user-friendly for the average person. Instead of hundreds of commandments, a single universal condition: believe and be saved. The spread of Christianity in the first centuries was like a viral epidemic. The idea of a God who was not a harsh judge but love, and who sacrificed himself for his followers, radically transformed the mentality of the time. Christianity introduced the concept of grace, a free bonus. You don't need to earn your salvation through works. You receive it as a gift. For the ancient world, brutal and hopeless, it was an irresistible offer. Yet there is an anomaly at its core that became a source of countless conflicts: the dogma of the Trinity, one God in three persons. For binary logic, one does not equal three. This theological complexity generated endless schisms and disputes within the Church itself, making the system unstable. Even so, thanks to an aggressive expansion policy and its integration with the Roman Empire, Christianity became the most populous religion in history. Then, in the 6th century, in the deserts of Arabia, the third version was launched: Islam. The analysis of this project reveals an attempt to restore the system to its original settings, but with a new functionality. The message was clear: the previous versions had been corrupted. The Jews hid part of the truth. The Christians deified a prophet and created the Trinity. A final correction was necessary. Islam, which means submission, proposes an extremely clear, concise, and powerful architecture. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. No complex theology, no Trinity, no icons, a pure, distilled monotheism. The Code of Islam imposes rigorous discipline. The 5 daily prayers function as a constant synchronization with the central server, keeping faith always present in the believer's life. The Ramadan fast is a collective stress test that unites the community. Zakat, a mandatory tax for the poor, creates a solid economic base. Islam goes beyond a simple religion, functioning as a total socio-political system. The state and the church are not separate. They form a single block. Currently, it is the fastest-growing religion in the world, driven by demographics and an aggressive retention policy. Becoming a Muslim is simple, but abandoning the faith can be dangerous in some interpretations. With the architecture of the 3 players dissected, the big question remains: why do they fight among themselves? Why were the Crusades and Jihad directed not just against pagans, but against each other? The answer lies in the theory of competition between close relatives. The conflict between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is not a war between different gods. It is a civil war within the same corporation. They dispute the same sacred history and the same lands in Jerusalem. Each new version declares the previous one obsolete. It is a struggle for legitimacy, for the right to be the only official distributor of divine will. We leave behind the scorching sands of the Middle East, a world where God is a father, a judge, and a general who demands absolute submission. Now we move to a region where the humid air of the jungle mixes with the smoke of funeral pyres, and time does not run in a straight line, but folds into infinite rings. We reach the Eastern Matrix: India, China, Tibet, Southeast Asia. Here, systems operate that are classified as a fundamentally different category of project. The Abrahamic religions are hierarchical structures like a pyramid. Eastern cults are like a neural network, decentralized, interconnected, without a single point of command. The analysis begins with the source code of Hinduism. It is a unique phenomenon. the oldest complex system of beliefs still in existence with more than 4,000 years. And the most surprising thing is that it has no founder. There is no Jesus or Muhammad. There is no clear starting point. Hinduism is defined not as a single religion, but as a conglomerate of systems that have learned to coexist on the same platform. It is an open-source project written by millions of sages over the centuries. The first thing that stands out is the number of gods, 33 million, a number that to the Western mind sounds like chaos. However, the algorithms find in this a brilliant solution to the problem of the user interface. In monotheism, God is one for everyone, from the peasant to the professor. It is a universal product that might not serve everyone. In Hinduism, the principle of personalization works. God is the absolute, an impenetrable energy, but it is difficult for a person to connect with an abstract energy. So the system offers an avatar, an interface. You are a warrior? Here is the fierce Shiva. You are a merchant? Here is Ganesha, who removes obstacles. You are a lover? Here is Krishna. Each person chooses the divinity that resonates with their psychological profile, creating incredible flexibility. It is impossible to reject the system, as you can always choose another, more suitable god without leaving it. The second fundamental element of the Eastern matrix is the caste system. From the perspective of modern humanist ethics, castes are a terrible injustice. But the analysis here is about social stability, not ethics. The caste system was a rigid division of labor, engraved in the religious code. Brahmins as priests, Kshatriyas as warriors, and so on. It was a social algorithm that prevented Indian society from disintegrating for millennia. Everyone knew their place and their duty. India was conquered dozens of times, but no invader managed to break the backbone of its civilization. Why? Because the social structure did not rest on a king who could be killed, but on the religion that permeated every home. Hinduism simply absorbed the conquerors, transforming them into just another caste. Now let's move to its main competitor, and at the same time its main export product, Buddhism. It emerged as a derivation of Hinduism. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, was someone who found a flaw in the system. He found a vulnerability in the system of infinite reincarnations and suffering, and offered a patch, the path to liberation, Nirvana. But the most fascinating thing is that Buddhism is an atheistic religion. There is no creator God. The Buddha is not a god. He is a teacher. The gods, if they exist, are also trapped in the cycle of suffering. The focus of the struggle changes completely. The true enemy becomes ignorance, and the great goal becomes the end of suffering instead of paradise. Buddhism operates on consciousness. Its four noble truths are, in essence, an algorithm to diagnose and treat the problem called suffering. Life is suffering. Suffering has a cause, desire. Suffering can cease, and there is a path to that. Why is this system so strong? Because it is incredibly adaptable. Buddhism does not impose a cultural code. When it reached China, it mixed with Taoism. In Japan, it became Zen. In Tibet, it absorbed local shamanism. It behaves like water, taking the shape of the container. It is the only world religion that spread across vast territories with almost no violence. The fundamental difference between the Western and Eastern code lies in the perception of time and justice. The West lives in linear time. There was a beginning and there will be an end, the apocalypse. Life is singular. This creates immense stress, as you only have one chance. The East lives in cyclic time, the wheel of karma. Worlds are created and destroyed infinitely. Death is not the end. It is a new beginning. The concept of reincarnation is a brilliant engagement mechanic. You don't just live. You evolve your energy, your karma. Karma is not a divine punishment. It is a law of cause and effect. It is a perfect algorithm for self-regulating behavior. You don't need a judge God to watch you. You create your own future. This makes the system autonomous and incredibly stable. And perhaps most importantly, it is surprisingly compatible with science. The idea of universes that expand and contract, of billions of years of existence, and of reality as an illusion, fits very well with the theories of modern physics. While science conflicts with Abrahamic religions, it dialogues much more harmoniously with the Eastern matrix. We often think of religion as something immaterial, but behind every temple and every mission, there is an economic structure. Today, we analyze the financial power of beliefs, treating religions as the oldest corporations on the planet. An audit was initiated to evaluate the strength of each one, not in souls, but in assets. We start with the Catholic Church, the oldest organization in the world, with continuous management. It has been accumulating capital for 2 millennia. Evaluating its assets is a complex task, as the Vatican does not publish detailed financial reports. Still, the data is assembled. The Church is the largest non-governmental landowner on the planet, with luxury properties in major global cities. Its main strength is the brand and the vast distribution network. More than 200,000 parishes in the world, each one being a fundraising point. Even modest donations from each believer add up to a multi-billion-dollar annual revenue. It is an old money model, a conservative and gigantic capital based on real estate and art. In the United States, we see a different model, especially with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. If the Vatican represents the old aristocracy, the Mormons act like major financial market investors. It was revealed that their secret investment fund, Ensign Peak Advisors, managed more than $100 billion in assets. The origin of this capital is in the discipline of the tithe. Each member donates 10% of their income. The efficiency of the model is notable, with less spending on sumptuous temples and more investment in financial markets. It is a religion that operates like a hedge fund with a maximum financial sustainability rating. In Islam, the economy functions under other rules. Lending at interest is prohibited, which could be an obstacle. However, the Islamic banking sector is growing explosively, using complex partnership schemes to bypass the prohibition. Islamic finance assets are estimated in the trillions of dollars. The main economic force, however, is the Waqf, properties donated for religious purposes that cannot be sold, generating perpetual income for mosques. In addition, the location of the main oil reserves in Muslim-majority countries creates an immense flow of capital into religious infrastructure. There is a direct correlation. The price of oil impacts Islam's capacity for expansion. In the East, India presents a scenario of silent and golden wealth. In 2011, underground vaults of a single temple closed for 150 years were opened, revealing a treasure estimated at more than $20 billion. And there are thousands of such temples in the country. Unlike the West, where money circulates or decorates walls, in India, gold was donated to the gods and locked away for centuries. It is dead capital, outside the economy, billions of dollars sitting idle while there is poverty outside. This creates the great paradox of the Eastern matrix, where immensely rich gods coexist with followers who are often very poor. This analysis leads us to an interesting correlation. The richer a country, the less religious it tends to be. Nations with a high standard of living, like those in Scandinavia and Japan, have empty churches. In contrast, poorer regions in Africa and Latin America have packed temples. Religion seems to function as insurance. Where the state fails to provide security and hope, people turn to God. The welfare state, by offering the same protection services, ends up becoming a direct competitor to traditional faith. The exception is the United States, a wealthy country with high religiosity. This is due in part to the prosperity gospel. This theology rewrote the code, transforming wealth from an obstacle to heaven into a sign of divine blessing. Poverty came to be seen as a lack of faith. This converts religion into an investment tool and a kind of lottery. Money in religion is a measure of energy. People invest in the reality they believe in. The fact that religious organizations collect hundreds of billions a year in voluntary donations proves that the demand for meaning and hope remains high. It is the oldest and most stable business on earth, but money is just fuel, and it can both build and destroy. The account books have been closed. Gold, lands, and stocks are just resources. They become useless if there is no one willing to pick up a sword to defend them. History teaches us that wealthy empires often fell to the blows of poor peoples obsessed with an idea. The objective is to calculate the fanaticism index, an indicator of the efficiency with which a religious system can suppress the instinct of self-preservation and transform a human being into a weapon. To an analytical mind, fanaticism is not just madness. It represents, in a cynical way, the highest loyalty to a project. Biology tells us, survive at any cost. Certain religions say, die for me and you will receive more than life. When the second command overrides the first, a soldier is born who cannot be stopped by fear. He does not fear because for him, death is not the end of the game, but the passage to a bonus level. The analysis begins with a historical simulation, transporting us to 11th century Europe. Pope Urban II delivers a speech that launches the Crusades program. It was a genius move. Europe was being consumed by internal wars, and the Church redirected this aggression outward. The motivation that moved thousands to sew red crosses onto their cloaks and march to die in the desert was the promise of full indulgence, the forgiveness of all sins. It was a contract: you fight the infidels, and God forgives your crimes. War became an act of purification. Murder became a prayer. At that moment, Christianity was the most militarized religion on the planet. However, moving forward in time, we see a sharp drop in this index in the Western world. Humanism, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment softened Christianity. It became a religion of mercy, but ceased to be a religion of war. From a humanist point of view, it is progress. From the point of view of combat efficiency, it is degradation. Now we turn the camera to the East. In Islam, the concept of holy war, jihad, is integrated into the core of the system, but an important distinction must be made. In its origin, jihad is, above all, a struggle against one's own imperfections. Armed struggle is a secondary aspect of defense. However, like every project, this was modified by radical interpreters. The analysis of the martyr phenomenon reveals perhaps the most potent psychological weapon in history. The mercenary fights for money. His risk is limited by the value of the contract. If the danger of death is too high, he retreats, for money is useless to a dead man. The fanatic fights for paradise. His reward is on the other side of death. For him, dying is not a loss, it is a profit. When an army is formed by people who wish to die, defeating it with conventional methods is almost impossible. Fear, the main tool of control on the battlefield, does not work with them. We see groups today that demonstrate incredible resilience, fighting superior armies with light weapons. They do not surrender. The answer lies in asymmetry. The weak in technology, but strong in spirit, can defeat the strong in technology, but weak in spirit. For a Western soldier, death is a tragedy. For a radical group, the death of a combatant is a celebration, an example to recruit new members. History offers us other examples. In World War II, Japan, state Shinto and the Bushido Code reprogrammed an entire nation for total self-sacrifice mode. Kamikaze pilots flew missions with no return because the emperor was a living god and dying for him was the highest honor. It was the peak of the fanaticism index in the 20th century, but this also reveals the greatest vulnerability of fanaticism, the depletion of resources. Such a model does not survive for long. You exterminate your best and bravest. Japan lost the war because fanaticism does not replace logistics and industry. Today, religious fanaticism is transforming, becoming decentralized, the lone wolves. Before, creating an army of fanatics required years of indoctrination. Today, a smartphone and recommendation algorithms are enough. A lonely young person can be captured by a digital bubble that transforms them into a warrior of God in a matter of weeks. It is fanaticism on demand, unpredictable and without a headquarters to be bombed. The enemy is invisible because yesterday he was your neighbor. For all this to work, it is necessary to dehumanize the target: infidel, heretic, apostate. These words are markers. Once the label is stuck, the moral prohibition against murder is suspended. The God who orders killing is still more effective at mobilizing the masses than the God who orders loving. Hate is a faster and cheaper fuel than love. Teaching to love takes years. Teaching to hate takes an hour. Fanaticism needs faith, and faith seeks proof. People believe in their gods because they supposedly demonstrate power through miracles, such as inexplicable cures or visions. But would these events be a real violation of the laws of physics or just a flaw in human perception? This leads us to analyze documented miracles, not to debunk them, but to find patterns. We start with the statistics of cures, the most requested miracle. In Lourdes, France, a famous pilgrimage center, more than 200 million people have sought a cure in over a century. Of that total, the Catholic Church has officially recognized only 70 cases as miraculous. The success rate is minimal. When comparing this rate with the spontaneous remission rate of serious diseases in ordinary hospitals, we realize that the probability of an inexplicable cure is statistically higher in a clinical setting. The placebo effect seems to be the main agent here. Faith does not work like magic. It acts as a powerful command for the body. When someone believes absolutely that they will be cured, the brain releases substances that strengthen the immune system. Religion functions as a trigger for this internal mechanism. The miracle, then, would not come from an external force, but from within the person themselves. This is confirmed by observing that similar cures occur in different religions: Muslims at saints' tombs, Hindus in the waters of the Ganges, Christians before icons. If only one God were the true one, miracles would be concentrated in only one faith. As for visions of angels and divinities, neurological studies show that the stimulation of certain areas of the brain, the temporal lobes, can induce the sensation of a presence, as well as visions and sounds. Biographies of great religious figures describe experiences that resemble known neurological events. The greatest revelations in history may have originated in a unique brain configuration of brilliant individuals. Meanwhile, science emerges as a major competitor in the field of miracles. 2,000 years ago, raising the dead was a divine act. Today, a defibrillator makes the heart beat again. Healing a blind person was a miracle. Today, cataract surgery is a quick procedure. Science is taking over functions that were once exclusive to religion. God's territory diminishes as knowledge advances. What remains for him are the big questions, like the origin of the universe and what happens after death. The number of miracles recorded today is smaller, and their quality seems to have diminished in the age of cameras and constant surveillance. Still, science offers facts, but not consolation. It tells us that we are finite matter. Religion offers the promise of an eternal soul and the possibility of a miracle. Given the choice, many prefer the more comfortable narrative because it offers hope. The simulation is complete. The pagan gods fell because they lacked the efficiency of monotheism. The Eastern Matrix survived because of its flexibility, but its peaceful nature leaves it at a disadvantage in the struggle for global power. The Abrahamic giants remain. Christianity won economically but lost its combative momentum. Islam grows in fervor but faces challenges with modernity. It seems like a stalemate. However, the analysis of all the data reveals that the true winner is not a name found in the scriptures. The strongest God that has always ruled humanity is the fear of death. All religions are, in essence, different responses to this fundamental fear. We created the gods from our anguish and our desire to live forever. The most powerful is the one who offers the best story about the victory against the end. Today, this leadership is changing. The strongest religion of our time is not one of the traditional ones. It is a faith based on success and control. Its temples are the shopping centers, its icons are the success profiles on social media, and its commandments are to consume and dominate. In this new faith, the God is the individual themselves, and this is the most dangerous belief of all. When man considers himself a god, he loses his limits. Power belongs to whoever controls the story we tell ourselves. As long as humanity exists, God will exist, for he is our reflection in the mirror of eternity. If you liked this investigation, your subscription to the channel and any donation value help us expand Project Pneuma. We would love to read your reflection on the video's subject in the comments and your suggestion for the next theme to be addressed. Tell us which city you are watching from. I thank you for your company until the end. M.